Today I'm going to go over Cedar Rapids, and I'm at Morgan Creek Park right now. One of Cedar Rapids' best parks and one of many reasons why we love it here. In this video, we're not going to go over all the reasons why I love Cedar Rapids. Instead, I'm going to give you the 3 things I would change about living in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. If you are new to the channel, I am Tony Lucan, the head realtor of the Living in Iowa team. On this channel, we go over all things Iowa and all the cities and towns that are in the great state of Iowa. If you have any questions at all, or you're at the point you need some help with your relocation or your moving situation, do not hesitate to call, text, or email us, as we will always have your back. We'll make sure you get all your questions answered and put you in the best position to have a smooth move to Iowa when the timing is right for you. So around me right now is Morgan Creek Park that is in southwest Cedar Rapids. It is known for its newer playground with those huge cube looking things that are actually slides. Our children love it here. And on the other side of the park are amazing walking trails that are our favorite in the entire city of Cedar Rapids. And there are lots of other things to love about the city that I wouldn't change, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. There are also things about Iowa and Cedar Rapids in general that no one is capable of changing, that we won't go into depth about, as we have covered them in some of our past videos that I strongly recommend you watch after this video. I hear people complain, and some even complain to me, such as, you guys don't have beaches, you don't have mountains, it is too cold there, it is too humid there, that make you think, of course, as they are some of the no-duh type of things that we are never going to change about Cedar Rapids and Iowa in general. Most of the country doesn't have beaches. Most of the country doesn't have epic mountains. Much of the country gets cold. Much of the country has humid climate. We know those are things you have to deal with if you move here. Those are not the things we will be talking about in this video. I'll be talking about smaller things that most watching this may not know about the area. And last thing we will cover is a huge deal that hopefully will change, but is not likely to. But I want to start with a smaller thing, but is still confusing to me. That would be to change cardinal directions or layout of the city with the cardinal directions. If you're not familiar with Cedar Rapids, it is laid out into 4 quadrants, which are northeast, northwest, southwest, and southeast. That sounds simple enough, but it is not that simple. Southwest and southeast are totally fine, as they make a lot of sense, but northwest and northeast get really confusing. The most northwest you can go in the city is really considered northeast. If you look at Blair's Ferry Road that goes west out of town towards Palo, Iowa, that is all considered northeast until you start running into the line where northeast hits Palo. Anyone looking for homes in this area cannot understand why it is northeast, especially out of state or out of country buyers that we have the pleasure of helping buy in the city. If you look at the map, it's obvious they use the river as a cutoff, but the problem is on the very northwest side of Cedar Rapids, it does not cross west over the river until it hits Palo. This makes it really confusing. If you use your cardinal directions, it's going to get confusing quick. Then if you look at northwest, it is sandwiched between northeast and southwest. It is basically central west Cedar Rapids, but it's labeled northwest Cedar Rapids. This again causes confusion, as there is not a good place where it crosses over to southwest or northeast. The northwest side of Cedar Rapids is by far the most confusing part of the city. All in all, it works, but if I were moving here from out of state, I would be confused big time. Second is a bigger deal, as it impacts everyone in the city, and that is the future plans of the city, especially involving a casino coming to the city. I remember being younger when they wanted to build a casino back then in Cedar Rapids, but for whatever reason, it got declined. This plan has been on the docket for over a decade, maybe even over 20 years now. The latest I seen on October 3rd, 2024, just a few days ago, was that the developers were selling their plans to the state commission, as the fate of the casino is in the state commission's hands. We won't get into the details with that plan, as it is still not approved or declined. There also has been rumors that the city wants to put in a state-of-the-art bridge that would be for bicyclers. The plan isn't the worst thing, as some would use that. The change I would make to this all would be, instead of doing either of those, why not put in a sports complex where the casino is planned to go, as it is just west of the river and west of downtown Cedar Rapids. This would be an ideal spot for either some baseball/softball fields for youth sports or some soccer fields. Currently, the sports complexes are all on the outskirts or a few miles out of the city. Bringing sports tournaments to the city would be a huge boost to not only the vibe of the city, but also the local restaurants, hotels, Airbnbs, businesses places, and the list goes on and on. Right now, most tournaments are in the other larger cities in Iowa or neighboring states, as Cedar Rapids is not very high on that list to host these tournaments. A good friend of mine has had 3 daughters all participate in youth sports growing up and explained this all to me, as no one likes when a tournament is held in Cedar Rapids at the current locations that are outside the city, and few tournaments are held at either of these places for this very reason. I believe this plan would take some of the travel burden off these parents living in the city of Cedar Rapids and also be a boost in the economy for all good reasons. I'm not sure the casino crowd is going to be all positive, and I think that plays a huge factor on why it is not yet approved. Let me know in the comments if you can think of any other plans you'd like to see, or if you agree or disagree with the casino being built in the city. Last on the list isn't just for Cedar Rapids, but does affect the city. It is by far the #1 thing I would like to see changed in the city. From the looks of it, though, it may already be approved, but it could really cause a huge problem. That is the CO2 pipeline that is going from ADM in southwest Cedar Rapids east to Clinton, Iowa, where it will cross over the Mississippi River into Illinois, and the CO2 pipeline will end in Decatur, Illinois, where the pipeline will be connected to an underground storage tank where the CO2 gas will be stored. The controversy will be the eminent domain, which eminent domain is defined as such: the power of the government to take private property for public use with the requirement to provide just compensation to the property owner. The reason for this pipeline is to cut down on carbon emissions, and specifically for carbon emissions of ethanol plants in Iowa. This is only one pipeline, as there are many more, mostly in northwest Iowa, but every corner of Iowa seems to be part of the plan for these pipelines. Whether you agree or disagree with the plan of these pipelines, it really hits home to these landowners that want nothing to do with these pipelines to be constructed into their land. Some landowners not only disagree with it, but also expect if the government uses eminent domain and gets it done against their will, their land value may plummet. Also, what happens if one of these pipes leak, or even worse, explode due to the pressure and gas in them? This is such a serious topic, and a change I would make, since I named the video what changes I would make, and I'll go out on a line and say this is what I would change. I would get rid of this altogether. I won't get into my personal views on climate change, but even if somehow it helped the health risk, it is not worth it in this scenario. That CO2, even if underground, can and will someday leak or explode. It seems like a ludicrous idea altogether. Sorry if that offends you, but we need to find a more reasonable solution than a pipeline idea. Also, eminent domain seems like a government overreach. Why, as a taxpayer, if you would disagree with this, should you be forced to pay taxes on something you completely disagree with? Even if it gets approved, you are really testing people's limit on patience, as it affects so many landowners in Iowa. Some of this land, where I know these landowners personally, just in my area, are not happy at all. And some of these people, the land has been owned by their family for generations. Hopefully, by the grace of God, it gets overturned, as I think it is a terrible idea. If you want to know more about this pipeline and the details of them, check out this video where I go over exactly that, and that is the CO2 pipeline.